Who thought it was going to be different? Come on, who thought it was going to be different? Day one of free agency for the Dallas Cowboys, and of course, they did nothing. But tonight, we'll talk about Dan Quinn attacking the Cowboys roster. We'll talk about all that we learned in day one of the NFL free agency. But man, it wasn't an active day for Dallas, though. Let's get to it. Here we go. What is up, everyone, and welcome into ATC Sports Dallas Primetime. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network. With a lot more content coming your way, make sure that you check out atcsportsdallas.com/Dallas, And as always, do me a favor and hit the like button for me if you enjoy the show. Welcome, everyone, on a Monday night. It is a great night to talk some Cowboys football, but maybe not one in which Cowboys fans are having fun, because this is that time of the year when we know what's going to happen, but it still stings a little bit to see so many NFL teams rebuilding and contenders have some fun in free agency while all we can do is sit around and wait. Right? Let's start with a damage report pretty quickly. This is the damage report presented to you by atzsports.com/Dallas. Right? The report is the following. Cowboys have signed nobody. That's why we're calling it a damage report. The Cowboys, and when I say have not signed anybody, I do mean not even their guys, which is between us. Like, I'm going to keep it between us, but it's really the thing that frustrates me the most, that the Cowboys are not even re-signing their own guys. But they have lost Tony Pollard. He's signing with the Tennessee Titans. They are losing Dorrance Armstrong, who is signing with the Washington Commanders. And they're losing Tyler Viotish, who is also signing with the Washington Commanders. And I would be surprised if that is where the Dan Quinn attack stops, but we'll get to that later. Those are the three players that the Cowboys are letting walk in free agency. Now, they're not necessarily a surprise. Pollard, I don't think, was expected back by many in Cowboys Nation. There was an open door to that conversation because allegedly, Pollard was willing to accept less money in order to stick around Dallas and play with the Cowboys for another year. The problem was, how low can he get, right? And I think that the biggest hope to stick with Pollard, and I'll say it, the biggest hope to land somebody like Derrick Henry, and we'll talk about that later in the show, was if the running back market was cheap enough, because you could look at the prices that running backs were going for last year and in previous years, and it was a position that was slowly getting cheaper and cheaper. Running backs are exceeding the expectations and the projections today, though. A lot of running backs have been signed so far, like Pollard went for $8 million per year average. So did DeAndre Swift. And somebody like Saquon Barkley was projected by ATZ Sports to sign for $10 million. And so PFF also was somewhere along those lines. Derrick Henry, for example, was projected by PFF to go for $9 million. And Barkley goes and signs for over $12.5 million. So just overall, the league is valuing the running backs a little bit higher than the media world thought they would. And I think that directly impacts what the Cowboys wanted to do at running back. And if they were open to a scenario where Tony Pollard was to return, that scenario in that world was somewhere where Pollard's deal was closer to $5 million than it was to $10 million. So I think that's not a surprise that signing for that kind of money, he left for the Tennessee Titans. I'm a little bit surprised that he went with the Titans. I didn't see them as the likely team fit for him, especially because they've got Ty Spears, who is a similar type of player. So I was a little bit surprised by that, I will admit. But, new offensive mind in Tennessee. There's Brian Callahan, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with Pollard on his team. But that's the big loss, the first loss of free agency. Again, not exactly a surprise. There are some others that we're going to get to today. But let me say hi, though, very quickly in the chat. We've got a lot of people here. Thank you for joining the show. Do me a favor, and as always, hit the like button for me if you enjoyed the show. We've got Mark Aaron saying only Cowboys fans, kind of has a ring to it, talking about. So from what I can see, people in the chat want to start an OF to finance some Cowboys free agents, and that is how bad and how down we are at right now. Only Cowboys fans. Damn it. Drums and Cowboys says, as always, our competition is getting better, and the Cowboys are doing nothing about it in free agency. And Drums and Cowboys mentions that because specifically the Eagles are making some big moves. The Giants have made some big moves, and the Commanders have gotten busy. Not necessarily huge, massive additions, but they have gotten busy. Gregory says, Mo, I was wrong about Pollard. I cannot believe that they let Pollard walk. And then there's Tyler Viadish also walking in free agency and going to the Commanders. Let's talk about Tyler Viadish for a bit because we mentioned it a little bit yesterday. And I think the jury is still out on that one. Because for a good while now, I've been talking about the Cowboys potentially upgrading at center, right? When we did our way too early free agency prediction for Dallas and who was going to stick around, who was going to come back for another year or more, we talked a lot about the center position because the dilemma there was, do you move on from Tyler Viadish to seek an upgrade, or do you bring him back but maybe cost yourself the opportunity to draft a center in the first round of the NFL draft? Back then, we were assuming that Tyron Smith was going to sign with the Cowboys for the 2024 season, though. Now that that has changed and that he's unlikely to return to Dallas, it's really all about how the Cowboys respond to this situation by losing two starters of their offensive line, potentially moving another starter from position. And I'm talking about Tyler Smith now. And there's just maybe too much movement up front for Dallas, especially because the right side of your line, sure, you've got Zach Martin, who is great, but you also have a struggling right tackle. Whether or not that was because of his injury, it's still somewhat of a concern. I think you have a lot of question marks up front. And I think to fully evaluate how we feel about the Tyler Viadish decision to let him walk in free agency, we're going to have to get into just what is your response. Is the response sit around and wait until the NFL draft and maybe, just maybe, find the right guy in the second or third round of the NFL draft? Because as of right now, first round, you're likely looking at a tackle or maybe a guard, depending on what you're thinking about doing with Tyler Smith. But they're not likely to sign an offensive tackle in free agency. And I'm not sure they're likely to sign a center, which is what I would like them to do, just to have some sort of insurance policy and for Brock Hoffman not to be plan B. Now, that's nothing against Brock Hoffman, but you should be aiming to get better instead of settling for what's already on your roster, in my opinion. So how they respond to this loss is going to be important. Like Pablo Sepulveda says, bring back Connor Williams at center. You know what? I wouldn't mind bringing back Connor Williams as that sort of insurance policy. Miami Dolphins taught him how to snap the football, and he learned how to play center for them. The Cowboys could never fully go down that route, which maybe speaks to the Cowboys coaching at that point, of course. But I don't know. Connor Williams wouldn't be the worst idea in the world, especially if you're trying to get better through the NFL draft. But I don't know what the price tag is going to be, though, with somebody like Williams. I know some of these centers are being costlier than we expected them to. Lloyd Cushenberry is out of the question now that he has also signed with the Tennessee Titans. So it's a sensible loss, though. I'll say that. I understand the idea that the Cowboys could get better up front by losing Biotish. But the real question to me right now is, though, uh, do you have a plan to replace him? Because I love the idea of replacing Tyler Biotish when the Cowboys were not essentially forced to pick a tackle in the first round of the NFL draft, which, at least based on the way that the roster is set up today, that seems to be the case for them. Because I don't know how else they're going to rebuild this offensive line if it's not by basically forcing the position in the NFL draft. And whoever is there, the Cowboys' problem is, are they going to be able to get the best player available, or are they going to get themselves into a situation where you just absolutely got to take a lineman? And if they don't get anybody in free agency, that might be the case. And I like TJ Voss, and TJ Voss might fit somewhere into this conversation. But again, you should be trying to get better and getting better athletes on this football team, in my opinion. Ricky Brogan says, I'm getting very nervous for next season. We're going to be the bottom feeders of the division because Jerry doesn't pay in free agency and Dak is greedy and takes all the money. To be fair, and I'm going to set the Dak debate aside because I know the Dak debate can get pretty ugly and deviate the conversation a little bit. To be fair, I feel like we get these comments and tweets and messages, whatever, in every offseason where we're like, Cowboys are going to go 9-8. The Cowboys are going to have a losing record. And for the last 3 years, they have won 12 games each of the regular seasons. My real problem is not having a fear of the Cowboys suddenly becoming a bad team. Because I also see some people be like, everything's going to be fine. The Cowboys are still a good football team. Yeah, but nobody's questioning that, are we? We are only questioning, like, the 49ers just got another edge rusher. Like, they already have Chase Young. They already have Nick Bosa. And they went and got Leonard Floyd. They're just getting better at such a crucial position. The Eagles are, I don't know what to make out of the Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick trade rumors, but at least they seem to have a plan because the reports early on were they're going to target Bryce Huff. Well, they went and they got Bryce Huff and they signed him to a huge deal, but it's clear they at least have some direction in what they want to do. The rumors were they want to get Saquon Barkley. They got Saquon Barkley. We can debate, did they overpay or did they not overpay? But like, these contending teams, or at least teams that are expected to contend, and in the case of the Eagles, a team that was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and in the case of the 49ers, they were in the Super Bowl this year. You're talking about having a plan and sticking to it and making it work one way or another and taking that next step, right? And again, you can say whatever you want about the Eagles and about the 49ers, but they have been more relevant in the playoffs than the Cowboys have been in the last few years. And by few years, you can take that as you want. Last couple of years, or if you want to go the last 5, 6, 7 years route, you can also do that. But man, this is my way of saying the Cowboys are just here, like, just waiting it out instead of having this solid plan of saying, you know what, I'm going to let Tyron Smith walk, but that's because I think Mike Onwenu from the Patriots is better, and I'm going to go get him, who, by the way, already re-signed with the Patriots. I think that's a good move for New England, and sticking with Kendrick Bourne, also a good move. So I don't know, random shout out to New England. So you have that, right? Biotish, Pollard are the two guys that we know are out, and also Dorrance Armstrong. And I want to talk about Armstrong very quickly because I opened up the Cowboys depth chart just for fun when I saw that news. And we didn't really know what the plan was for Armstrong. We knew that the Commanders made sense because there's Dan Quinn, and Armstrong knows Dan Quinn very well. He's been very productive in limited playing time. So maybe if he got the chance to start, he could take the next step. And what a better opportunity than having the guy who has coached him over the last few years. So he made sense, right? That's a fit that absolutely made sense. But suddenly, you kind of look at the depth chart, and the Cowboys basically have Sam Williams as depth for a defensive end or edge rusher. Like, that's pretty much what the depth looks like right now for the Cowboys behind Micah Parsons and behind Marcus Lawrence, who are going to be your starters. And sure, we could add Viliami Fehoko to the discussion, but the Cowboys didn't pick Viliami Fehoko in the 4th round for him to be a healthy scratch all season long, literally all season long. The only weeks that he wasn't a healthy scratch was when he did head for IR, and he likely was nothing but a IR stash because he suddenly appeared on the injury report and went into IR. So I'm not sure what we make out of Viliami Fehoko other than the Cowboys sure did not like what they got in year one, because maybe that had to do with the depth that Dallas had, but it likely had to do with Fehoko a lot as well. And we'll see, he can prove us wrong and all that. But the Cowboys have a pretty underrated need for edge rushing depth today. All right? You've got a team with Reddick and Sweat getting Bryce Huff, and granted, they're going to get rid of at least one of Reddick and Sweat, it seems like. And you've got the Chase Young and Nick Bosa team adding Leonard Floyd. The Cowboys, though, do not seem to care that much about depth. You've got Dante Fowler Jr. also hitting free agency. We'll see what happens with him. I'm thinking maybe the Commanders also want somebody like Dante Fowler Jr. Could happen as well. But Dan Quinn went after the Cowboys, man. That's 2 free agents that he signed from the Cowboys. There are reports that he's interested in Jordan Lewis as well. John Klein from ESPN reported that. He mentioned that the Commanders have sounded like they're interested in Jordan Lewis, but nothing quite formal yet. Not even that they're negotiating or anything like that. So we'll see if Dan Quinn ends up targeting Lewis or not. It's clear that he likes him, despite the size and everything. He likes him in the slot. And Lewis played himself into an opportunity, I feel like. Because Jordan Lewis, man, let me read you some stats that I had here prepared for you with the Jordan Lewis thing, just to show you how valuable he's been for Dallas. Jordan Lewis, among 75 cornerbacks with the most snaps in 2023, he was the 13th best in missed tackle percentage. Jordan Lewis can play in the slot so well because he can get involved in the run game. He can be a good tackler in the open field. And he also came up with huge tackle for losses here and there, right? In high leverage situations. Like, you remember the Miami Dolphins game near the goal line where Jordan Lewis was making some game-altering stops. And he also had some moments like that in other games late in the year. And it seems like Lewis could head to Washington. The Commanders could also get Jaron Kears. I don't think we're going to make a big deal out of that, though. The Cowboys are good at safety. They've got Dono. They've got Malik Hooker. They've got Marquise Bell transitioning back to safety, probably. Israel Mukwamu, who is still somewhere in between those two positions, safety and cornerback. They're good. They're fine at safety. But I don't know if they're fine at edge rusher in terms of depth. Obviously, you've got Micah. You've got D-Law. You don't ask for a better starting duo than that, I think. That's a great starting duo. But I'm getting worried about depth now. And if they don't bring back Fowler Jr., even more so. Because I don't think the Cowboys are going to have a lot of options to add to their current depth at edge rusher. Well, let's see what you guys have to say, though, in the chat. We've got Ace over here. He says, I used to like Jerry. Now it's time for him to sell the team. They don't care about getting better. And Ace, although you are right, and I see what you mean, I also think Stephen Jones deserves probably most of the criticism right now because he's absolutely the guy in charge in Dallas, way more than Jerry. Now, we can talk about Jerry being responsible for that, right? But, Stephen is the guy running the show right now. Robbie says, what about King Henry? And we'll get to that. We'll get to that shortly. But before I did want to read some other of your comments here. We've got BB saying the plan is to be just good enough to contend and keep fans' hopes up so they spend money on tickets and merch. That's all into them. I really think this is somewhat of an accurate assessment of the Cowboys situation right now. Because otherwise, I don't get what we're doing this offseason. And I'll explain myself here. I don't mind if the Cowboys don't go get Patrick Quinn and they don't get, Aziz Al-Shair, who, by the way, is also off the board. So is Jordan Brooks from Seattle. So is Frankie Luvu. So many of those big-name linebackers are off the board, not available anymore. But I get it if they don't make the blockbuster free agency signing, because those also historically seem to fail, right? If you overpay for players, those contracts seem to be looked at as failures years after they happen. So I get that. But I don't get the having 16 pending free agents before today's legal tampering period began and re-signing 0 of those 16 free agents. Let me make this clear. 7 of those 16 were starters of a 12-win football team. And you're telling me none of them was worthy of being re-signed? Not even the second-team All-Pro left tackle? Not even the outside veteran cornerback that clearly made a difference on your defense, especially in a year where Trevon Diggs got hurt, in Stephon Gilmore? Not even Jordan Lewis, who's a solid nickel back who could be the perfect replacement for whoever, like if you want to move Bland back to the nickel spot, he could be your number 4 cornerback, no trouble, because Bland can kick outside and just Jordan Lewis can be the inexpensive number 4 guy on your defensive backfield at cornerback. None of them were worthy of being re-signed from your 12-win team. Again, I don't get that part. And I do think that's been a little bit different from other years, where we're not just talking about not getting outside free agents. We're talking about not paying your guys. That part has been surprising to me. And they're going to pay some. I expect Jonathan Hankins to come back. And I wouldn't be surprised if, say, Rico Dowdle comes back. They're likely bringing the long snapper Trent Sick back, right? But none of them were re-signed before the legal tampering period, and I don't get that. And going back to the sitting in the middle thing, the Cowboys are also not going in a rebuild mode, which has been my complaint for a while. If you're not going to go all in, fine, but why are we doing this weird 1-year deal thing for Mike McCarthy, other than the fact that maybe you don't want to pay up his deal? You don't want to liquidate his contract. You want to move up from Dak because you're not extending him? If you want to move on, why didn't you trade him in January? Why didn't you get the draft picks in return to really start a rebuild and maybe get a new coach in here so he can lead the rebuilding of the team? But right now you're in this very weird spot where, they're going to win regular season games, which, to the comment that we were reading's credit, to that comment's credit, they're going to keep us entertained by the time the regular season comes around. But they're sitting in the middle. They're not going one way or the other. They're just keeping us entertained. That's the slogan, right? Keeping us entertained. And that's pretty much where it dies. Shout out to Jan Stucker. I appreciate you watching the show today. Robert says, Jerry does not care about the Cowboys. He's got his Super Bowls. He's just securing the bag for his family. It's WWE. Do your research. We've been duped. he sold his old 25 years ago. Man, that's how we feel right now, for sure. And I understand these people going on Twitter and the internet and being like, why are you surprised? I don't think anybody is surprised. I think it's just frustrating every year because it's not right. Like they have not been proven right. If the Cowboys were winning in the playoffs, like I would understand them going like, sure, complain about free agency, but what we're doing is working. But it's working to a point, not to the point that it should be working, where you're winning playoff games and getting to the NFC Championship game at least once in the last 3 decades, which has not happened. And I'm rounding up, I know, but the point still stands. Catherine says, I wonder what the hell is Jimmy Johnson doing working for the team? Oh, he's not. He's not really working for the team. I don't think so. He was laughing in that radio spot. I don't think it was the truth at all. Now, on Derrick Henry here, no king in Dallas. Jane Slater from NFL Network went live on TV and she explained that, and I can find you the exact quote actually, because we used it for an article over at A to Z Sports. Let me find you that very quickly. Because she talked about the running back, the need for a running back in Dallas. Because, man, the Cowboys absolutely need a running back right now. But she said, I've been told that they're very high on Jonathan Brooks from Texas. So if you wanted a likely running back target for the Cowboys in the draft, there's Jonathan Brooks, who I know a lot of people don't like because he's injured. But she said, I've been told they're very, very high on Jonathan Brooks from Texas. He would likely be a second-round pick for you. And she added, let me put to bed some of the speculation about interest in Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, and she mentioned other guys. I was told fake news. They have not entertained those conversations at all about some of these free agents, some of those free agents. So Jane Slater shooting down the notion that the Cowboys could be interested in some of the big name free agents. And I'll tell you this, besides her report, my big thing with Henry, my big thing with the possibility of bringing back Tony Pollard was this free agent market for running backs might suck. Like, I thought running backs were going to become available and they were going to be surprised at the lowly deals they were going to be offered. Because I really thought we might get into that situation there with Dallas. With the NFL, excuse me. But they're paying them more than I imagined. Like Pollard getting $8 million to me was a surprise per year. And the same with DeAndre Swift and Barkley landing more than the franchise tag number to me was also a surprise. I don't think this is in the Cowboys range now. Like, I don't think they're going to pay that kind of money to Derrick Henry. I thought Henry was a legit possibility because I thought he could get much less money than we expected, but they're getting more. And I think that's clear now. There's going to be a team out there that is willing to go above and beyond for Derrick Henry, I think. And I do believe he's going to land somewhere in the $12 million range. And the Cowboys are not going to go down that route. They're just not. So no king in Dallas, in my opinion. That's the way that I see it. And as for the next few days, the Cowboys have many free agents out there. And at this point, I really don't know what to expect. Like, I would love to see Stephon Gilmore come back for another year. But I'm not sure the Cowboys are going to do any of that because I'm not sure what the plan is right now. The moment that you're not keeping Tyron Smith on the team, to me, has been the big indicator that they really might not spend a dime this time around. I wouldn't be surprised if Gilmore is also not brought back, but we'll find out with time. We'll find out as soon as we start hearing which teams might be involved and in the running for Stephon. But 0 out of 16 pending free agents re-signed is insane to me before the legal tampering period. And here's the thing. Laquan says, we don't have money to spend. You absolutely do have money to spend. How come the Eagles paid Jalen Hurts so much money, yet have all of these cap space? Because they built the contract that way. The Cowboys could be like this, like they could snap their fingers. And before I even snap them, the Cowboys could have made $60 million in cap space that easily without cutting anybody. Because they could restructure deals. They could extend Dak Prescott. They could lower his cap hit. They could make cap space so easily. They're pitching us that they don't have enough money. They're getting in front of the mic when they have reporters in front of them and they're like, listen, there's not enough money. There's a hard cap set and there is nothing we can do about it. Never mind that 31 other NFL teams are doing something about it. They're restructuring deals. They're manipulating the cap in very creative ways. The Cowboys just don't want to go down that route. The Cowboys want to tell you they don't have enough money and that the cap is tight, but that doesn't mean they can't do anything. They can do nothing about it. They absolutely can. And this is the most valuable franchise in sports. This is Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones. Like, they've got the actual cash. They're one of the teams that have spent the least money in cash for a reason. They just like the business model and they're okay doing things this way. Either that and or they don't know how to manipulate the salary cap, which I don't know which would be worse. I don't know which would be more frustrating. Knowing that they're smart enough, but they don't want to go do things this way. They don't want to risk it all. Or knowing that they just don't know how to do it. Like, they do think there's a hard cap in the NFL. I think they're too smart for that, though. I think they know what they're doing. Laquan says, Dak got us by the... No, he doesn't. He doesn't, Laquan. Cowboys tell you that because you believe it. That is it. I'm sorry, but that is the truth. And I say it extremely respectfully. Look at what other NFL teams are doing. Teams with high contracts for their quarterbacks. It's not Dak's fault that the Cowboys are not signing people. It's the Cowboys telling you that it's Dak's fault because fans believe it, sadly. Little by little, they're starting to see the light, I think, and being like, oh, actually, the Cowboys might be trying to fool me here a little bit. That's what they're doing. That's the reality of it. Let's see here. Tyler Viadish is not worth $10 million a year. I am sorry, says Ryan G. And that might be true. My issue is with having so many question marks in the offensive line when the offensive line wasn't great exactly last year. Let's see here. Dak is going to get $59 million, says Vincent. Dak is going to account for $59 million, but he's not going to get that in cash in 2024. It's just the cap number that could be easily dropped to somewhere around 40 with a restructure and maybe even to the 30s, 20s with a contract extension. That is the reality of things. That is the reality, and that's pretty much it. Linebackers, let me just talk about this very quickly before we get out of here. A lot of them were just taking off the board. A free agency, I know this is not the NFL draft, so maybe using the board is not the way to go. But linebackers, man. Frankie Luvu has a team. He's signing with the Commanders. And I got to tell you, I love that fit. I love Quinn and Luvu together. Like, from an objective point of view, they are a great fit. Jordan Brooks also already has a team. As is Al-Shaairi signing with the Texans. So there are fewer options at linebacker. And I will say this. As frustrated as we are with the Cowboys' way of doing things, I still expect them to sign a linebacker. At least one. Like, I cannot fathom them not signing a linebacker in free agency because the need is so overwhelming that they absolutely have no choice. Like, you gotta get a linebacker in this free agency. You gotta get there before the NFL draft. You gotta have at least one, and I've argued that they need 2 linebackers in Dallas signed in free agency. I hope they don't let me down, because that would be very disappointing, because the need is so glaring and so painfully obvious that I don't think they have a choice not to sign a free agent. But I would have loved Aziz, and he's off now. He's not available now. I would have loved Jordan Brooks. He's not available now. So maybe we're looking at what? Are we looking at Levante David, maybe, with some luck, and Eric Kendricks? I would be happy with that combination. Like, I would be very happy with that. Jerry says, remember, we have a new defensive coordinator, and we still have all of these needs. Ugh. And I feel that, Jerry. I feel that, I know what you mean. It is frustrating, for sure. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much what we've noticed in day one of free agency in the Dallas Cowboys world. You know, we don't have a lot to talk about regarding Cowboys signings, because there has been none. But, you know, we're mostly reacting to to other people's signings that in some way, shape, or form relate to the Cowboys. But I'll let you be this Monday night, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back tomorrow with a packed show. Tuesday night, day 2 of NFL free agency. And I'll see you tomorrow night, 8 p.m. again. Check out AtoZSports.com/Dallas. We had like 9 or 10 posts out there just out of today. So you can catch up there with all of your Cowboys stuff. And you can also do it tomorrow. So bookmark A2Z Sports somewhere in your browser, and I'll see you there as well. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.